Now, I'll let you guys decide, which costume do I look better in? Woody or Buzz? I mean, obviously, I look adorable in both, but I'll let you guys choose which you think I look more adorable in. Comment below and let me know what you think. Toy Story 4 is the 21st film from Disney Pixar, and this movie once again follows Woody, Buzz, and the gang as they go on a road trip with Bonnie, who has recently made a new friend named Forky. As you can see from those wonderful photos I have provided you and my cool Pizza Planet t-shirt, I have been a very big fan of Toy Story for quite some time. Toy Story literally made Pixar the studio that it is today, and since then has remained one of the most important films of all time, period. And since that film's release all the way back in 1995, Pixar has really established itself to be this animation juggernaut so that whenever they release a new film, people tend to pay attention. And rightfully so. They have continued to make hit after hit and continued to raise the bar of what is expected of animated movies. But even with that being said, I think it would be fair to assume that when most people heard that they were making a Toy Story 4, I don't think a lot of fans were too keen on that idea. And although I do feel that Toy Story 3 is the weakest in the trilogy, I think it's pretty undeniable that the way that that film ends is the perfect send-off to these characters who have played a very significant role in a lot of people's childhood. Not only that, but I think with Pixar, they haven't really had the most success with their sequels. I think excluding the Toy Story films, I'd probably say that Incredibles 2 is the strongest sequel that they have produced so far, and even with that movie, I thought it was fine at best. On the other hand, I'm not under the impression that Pixar was blind to the fact that fans absolutely adore Toy Story 3, and I also don't believe that the creators of Toy Story 4 forgot to mention that fact. And I would say because the fact that they have yet to make a bad Toy Story movie, I think it's worth giving this film the benefit of the doubt. Now, I understand how difficult that can be. I'm one of those people that was really hesitant to the idea of this film. Believe me, I'm right there with you. But thankfully, Pixar has made yet another wonderful film with Toy Story 4. I enjoyed this movie immensely from start to finish. One of the just immediate things that sticks out about this film being so incredible is the animation in this movie, which is absolutely unbelievable. It's gorgeous. This is something that Pixar in particular has been crushing it with recently, with movies like Coco, The Incredibles 2, even The Good Dinosaur, which I really wasn't a fan of. All of those movies are completely stunning, and Toy Story 4 is no exception. I mean, as far as Pixar's competition goes, I don't think any of those other animated studios are able to achieve what Pixar does in this film. I'd say Laika is probably the exception to that rule. Their movies do look pretty amazing, but with what the animators are able to accomplish in this movie, the amount of detail in every frame in this film is outrageous. There are a few shots in this movie that I literally was like, wow. And this probably is their best looking movie, which isn't an easy thing to say considering how impressive their filmography is. I also loved the new characters that this movie introduces. One character that I wasn't particularly looking forward to going into this movie being Forky. I had the feeling that he was going to get rather irritating pretty quickly, but he's not that at all. I thought he was really sweet and added a fun dynamic to this universe of what exactly defines a toy. Also, for the record, Bunny and Ducky, who are voiced by Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key, absolutely incredible. Because after watching this movie, if it was announced that they were getting their own series on Disney Plus, I would watch that entire show in one sit-in. Also, you can throw Duke Kaboom in there too, who is voiced by the king of the Keanu-sans himself, Mr. Keanu Reeves, who has been crushing it this year. But seriously, all of the new characters in this film are great. Not just good, but great. I would absolutely love to see them pop up in more stuff, whether it be a Disney Plus show, or who knows, maybe even another Toy Story down the line. But it's not just just the new characters that stand out in this movie, part of the original core. Some of those characters even get their own chance to shine in this movie. Bo Peep, who is pretty much absent in Toy Story 3, she pops up again in this movie, and she is awesome. I loved what they did with her character, who is once again voiced by Annie Potts, but her dynamic that she has with Woody, who I'll get to in a second, it's fantastic. And they took who was a relatively small character and actually fleshed her out and made her someone of importance to Woody and his life, who, speaking of which, is probably the strongest element of this movie. Each of these Toy Story films has greatly involved Woody and his arc. And comparing where he began in the first film to where his character is now, I thought it was incredibly well done, and I was genuinely surprised at some of the positive messages that this movie tries to convey. I do think that there are some people who are going to watch this film a bit passively and not really pay too much attention to Woody's arc in this movie, but if you do go see this film, I implore you to dig deeper into exactly what this movie is trying to say, because its message I felt was actually super mature, like on par with some of the stuff that is in Inside Out. And yes, it did make me cry. What of it? I mean, I'm an adult. I'm allowed to cry. Damn it. Also, thankfully, with Toy Story 4, I think Pixar has delivered one of their funniest movies to date. This movie is absolutely hysterical. This film, in multiple scenes, had me out loud laughing. I think that this is their funniest movie since probably Finding Nemo. Again, a lot of that is due to the new cast of characters who bring a lot of energy to this movie, and you guessed it, a lot of character to the film. Speaking of which, and I won't get too far into spoilers with this movie, but there is a character who is introduced in this movie and I felt was at risk of being too much like Lotso Huggenbear, who was one of the weaker elements I felt of Toy Story 3. But thankfully, I think the creators of this film take audiences' expectations and they kind of subvert them in a way that I was not expecting. Again, not going into too much more, but I think what they do with this character had me pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, I would say I do have some small gripes in this film. At times, this movie can get a bit too repetitive for my liking. A lot of this movie is focused on either getting into or out of one singular location in this movie, which they do multiple times throughout this film. And around the third or fourth time that it happens, I started to feel that it was a bit too tedious and I felt like it was pretty redundant. But thankfully, other than that, I don't really have too many more issues with this film. Going into this film, I was highly skeptical with it even existing on a fundamental level, but I've got to say, this movie really surprised me. Pixar again delivered with another fantastic Toy Story movie. And although I wouldn't necessarily say that I couldn't imagine this series without this installment, I do think with what they do with some of the characters in this film, I really do believe that fans of this trilogy will be highly satisfied with this installment. So did you guys see Toy Story 4? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, you can click on the link down below and subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. You guys, thank you so much for watching and see you next time. I bit my tongue.